Welcome to Tenacity with Sonia C, the podcast where entrepreneurs, founders, and ambitious professionals come to learn from those who have walked the path, navigating challenges and achieving success. Whether it's thriving in business, pivoting, scaling for growth, fundraising, or finding work-life balance, dealing with loneliness, adversity, or overcoming personal struggles. Our guests share the insights and strategies that have empowered them to level up. I'm your host, Sonia, and let's get started. My guest today is Carol Stiza. Carol is on a mission to help individuals truly understand their value and communicate it effectively in both their personal and professional lives. Carol is not only a seasoned expert in leadership and performance development, but also someone who turned a challenging moment in her career into a transformative journey of self-discovery and success. Carol's story is not just about growth, it's about empowerment, clarity, and actionable strategies that can change the way you approach your work and life. Hi, Carol. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic.
Awesome. Before we get into the episode, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, your background?
Sure. I am a wife, a mother, a sister, all the things that we love to hold on to that's warm and fuzzy. But part of that journey has been my husband was in the military for 26 years and we moved around a lot. And I got to work in corporate and he worked in military, which started my love of comparing leadership goals. I am the mom of two grown adults who I get to hear complain about their disillusionment with work. I'm a pet owner, all the things. But one of the things that also brings depth to all my relationships is I lost my mother when I was very young in a car accident. I sadly survived two more car accidents and stage 3 cancer. So I understand how precious life can be. And we get so busy, we forget it. So it's one of the things I like to bring to clients because the whole person shows up at work and the whole person shows up in sessions. And I don't want them to miss out or regret missing out on a moment that matters.
I totally understand. I'm a breast cancer survivor. I just feel like those types of experiences just sort of reshape you a little bit, and life just isn't the same no matter what you do and and try to go back to some sort of normality that like you just can't be normal. Something has changed in you, right?
Well, mortality always comes to it. It reshapes the crystal ball
For
that you
sure.
look through for sure.
So, can you share your experience with the performance review that led you to realize the importance of understanding and communicating one's values? How did this moment shape your career and approach to personal development?
Absolutely. So I think many of us have sat in a meeting where we're expected to hear feedback and we automatically go in assuming we're going to hear what we do well and it's going to be balanced with some things where we can grow. In fact, that's how our brain works. It looks for where we're accepted and respected and loved and where to grow next.
Mm.
And I walked into a performance review and the person sat down and just told me every non-essential nitnoid comma or period I'd missed in a letter. I mean, things that didn't matter to the job accomplishment, but they just were on this repeating record of as if the only thing they were supposed to tell me is ways to improve. And I think we have led everyone to think that they're going to get a growth conversation with asking the question, how can I improve? And they end up getting a fix it conversation, which they don't want.
Yeah.
And I stepped out of that meeting deflated, angry, knowing it didn't matter, but angry the person took the time to waste my time that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really curious of how do I go in and have more control in those conversations? And it turns out we do.
Mm.
We have more control than we give ourselves permission to have, or even know that we have permission to have. And so I did a lot of research. In fact, I did quite a few projects in my grad studies to just understand human psychology of that element. And it really changed the way I looked at empowering anybody I worked with.
You mentioned that many of us have a few things wrong when it comes to controlling our success at work. Can you elaborate on some common misconceptions people have about workplace success and how they can overcome them?
Sure. So I'll zip back to that comment I made that our brains are scanning the universe 24/7 for what are we doing right, where are we accepted, where we expect, where we're respected, and where can I grow next?
Mm,
And that where can I grow next need has sent us down this path of conversation that if we ask, hey, what do you think I could improve upon? Equals the growth conversation, and it doesn't, because the person who hears that question assumes that you think something needs fixing.
hmm
Well, nobody needs fixing. We can grow, we can accumulate information, what we do right. So one of the number one myths at work is I can ask how to improve and someone's going to tell me how to grow. No, you have to ask, where do you see me growing next? You literally have to use the word to get the right information. And we also, myth number two is we don't go around and ask for, hey, what am I doing? In a sense, what am I doing that's right? And it sounds like a horrible question, and it is, but you can reframe it like, what's the one thing I do really well that helps you get your job done?
mm,
What's the one thing that you need me to do consistently so I never disrupt it? And you notice I said, what's the one thing? Because that's easier for people to answer.
hmm
If they go, oh, there's more, like, oh, no, I can only handle one thing at a time. Thanks. So we go into work kind of like we went into college or high school wanting a grade.
Yeah.
And if I don't get a grade, what do I need to get a better grade? And so
hmm
we've misconditioned the people to go into the workforce. They want to know how they're doing, what's my grade, and where can I grow next, get a better grade. So we need to teach people how to go and have those conversations and ask.
What happens if you go into one of those meetings and you have your employee or your coworker fill out a form beforehand and everything that they answer is that they've done perfect? How does the manager handle that?
So it's good to have that to start with and say, I see that you feel really good about all the things that we've listed on this, but all
hmm
the things we've listed are kind of subjective. So from your perspective, I get that you feel good about it. So let me show you where I think you can grow next. And if a manager can use that statement, here's where you can grow next, it doesn't negate how they feel about their performance, but now they get to know what to do next. And when we know what to focus on, what to do, we don't have to spend any time or waste any time wondering what went wrong.
So let's use an example of something that might be on that form and you
Sure.
walk through it just so we can use an example. So let's say one of them is, I don't know if people still use this, but let's just say it's punctuality. And the person says, I'm always punctual 100%, like gives them the best grade. And me as the manager, I'm like, you're late every day. Like, no, I don't agree with that. How does the manager respond to that
Mhm.
constructively and not make the other person feel like,
Right.
person might stay late. So you know what I mean? It's a fine line, but I just want to use like a very simple example.
Oh, and it's a great example because it comes up more often than you know. And so, and I had to laugh because I was like, oh, I've had this conversation. I've literally had this conversation. I've had somebody go, I'm always on time. And I go, okay, hmm. Time, obviously, being on time is can be subjective. So when you say you're on time, walk me through what you mean when
Mm,
I say we start work at 9. Well, it turned out that if they were in the parking garage, they were on time for them. And I'm like, yeah, but if you're in the parking garage at 9, it still takes you all that time to get to the elevator and then stop for coffee. And by the time you're at your desk, it's 9:15, 9:20, sometimes 9:30. So if I say we're having a meeting at 9 and you say I'll be on time and then you stroll into the meeting, you're late. So
mhm.
here's what we mean by being on time at 9. And this is a great opportunity for us to flesh this out. Because if your kid's waiting for the bus and you can't leave that kid, which means you can't get into the car park until 9, then we
Right.
need to figure out what on time means so that we're all in agreement that you're on time. And so I've literally had to walk through, tell me what on time means to you, because it's very different than mine. You completely different than mine. And so this is one of those things that I tell leaders often, be really clear of what success looks like to you and communicate it. If you say, hey, we start our workday at 9, that means I expect you to be in the office, already got your coffee, already settled in and ready to work starting at 9, which means you probably want to be walking in around 8:30.
Mm-hmm.
Take your pick, come in at 7, read a book, don't care, but we start work at 9. And people say, well, I have to do that. I go, yes, you do. We live in a new world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's actually funny. I've had that issue a couple times, and I think that's why I brought it up because I'm like,
Yeah.
wait, now that I'm here.
Hmm. And it's the same thing with what does complete looks like to you? What does working with a client and successfully, what does customer service look like? I mean, the things that we all assume everybody thinks like us, and no one thinks like us. We're all unicorns walking around going, we're all the same. Like, nope, you don't want to be the same. So now
Yes.
you have to be really clear.
Okay, I like that. So in your research, what were some of the most surprising findings about effective communication and self-promotion in the workplace? How can our listeners apply these insights to their entrepreneurial journeys?
Well, one of the things that I found fascinating was, and this is specifically this is for everybody, especially entrepreneurs, because they want to know what their customers want, what'll make their customers come back, what'll make their customers brag about them. Well, the same thing, leaders need to know the same thing. Everybody needs to know the same thing. It's the way our brains work. We're looking for that little dopamine hit so we know what to do better, the same, or best.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a bad habit of thinking that we should wait around to gain that information. So people do it the soft way, like, here's a survey, fill out this survey. And what we haven't been taught is how to lean in and ask for the information we need when we need it and when we can use it. So I'll give a example of the research. 2 Harvard teachers, professors, and consultants in their own right with their own business wrote a book on feedback, and they were out to understand conflict at work. And feedback was one of the top 5 conflict-oriented conversations at work. And so my background's in HR, at least everything I did for 20 plus years now falls underneath HR. And we've all been asked to train someone on how to give good feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's the research that surprised me the most. We can't teach how to give good feedback. It fails 95% of the time. But what we can teach is how to ask for good feedback. And when you understand how to ask for the information you want, you automatically know how to give it in a more useful way and a more timely way. So for an example, you're walking around your office and you just finished the big project, you turned it in and somebody goes, great work. And then crickets. And you don't know how good the work is and you don't know what to do next. And you're just like, this is a perfect time to go talk to everybody in the project and say, hey, we turned it in. We're waiting to hear good news. But hey, just to give you a quick 5 minutes, given that we worked on this project, what was the one thing I did that was the most helpful to you on this project? And can you share with me how you received that information and how it helped you? Because I'd love to learn how you see your work.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to know the next time we get to work together, how do you want us to work the same or better? What can we do together next to keep this momentum? So you can ask those things. And I use a specific framework to help people feel safe. Context, ask for one thing you want to know about, specifically positive, how they experienced it, and what and how questions to keep the conversation moving forward. And as I've taught this little framework, and ask people to experiment at work or even at home.
Mm-hmm.
This is great with teenagers. Let me tell you, works wonderful is you can actually go around and tell people the one thing that you noticed really well about them today and see how they respond, because it's a kind of a cool feeling. And then it's a way of entering into a conversation that we weren't trained to do, because we were trained out of asking in school. And now
Right.
here we go, walking around the world going, you need to ask more questions. And they look at me like I have 5,000 heads and none of them are looking in the right direction. But the research does state that we are so conditioned not to ask that it comes to our detriment. And then we think we should wait for good information. And here I am saying, no, now the research says if you know how to ask for it, you'll get it, but you'll also learn a new skill.
What strategies do you recommend for aspiring entrepreneurs and existing founders to accurately communicate their value to potential investors, partners, and customers?
So this is, I get asked this often, not that, I mean, I do have my own coaching business, but
Mm.
I haven't, invented a product and gone out and just beat the bushes and done so. There are many extraordinary entrepreneurs. One of the things that I have found helpful is when they're looking to expand or ask for investors, they really need to go interview quite a few people to understand what value it is that attracts them. What are they looking for? Kind of become a detective.
Yeah.
We think we get inspired and we have this great idea and everybody's going to recognize it. And they may not recognize it because they don't see the same story from our perspective.
Yeah.
So I tell people, I say, go out and interview investors all the time. Go out and ask people, if I were to say I have this product and it does this, what are you expecting? What would make that the most valuable thing to you?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm preaching to ask the question, which I think you've gotten by this point. But the point is that a lot of times they go out and act and get disillusioned because they're acting on misinformation or their own information.
What they think.
Yes. And they really need to go ask the people that they want to make a difference with to really explore whether or not to put the effort.
Yeah. I love that response because I see this all the time because I'm in tech. And I work with a lot of startups and they'll pitch their idea and they're talking about the technology and the features. It does this, it does that. And I'm like, I don't care about the technology. I don't care about the features. What problem is it solving? And I'm always really surprised at how many people cannot answer that question.
Right. And that's the point right there. If they don't know what problem they're solving, they're just adding to the noise on the marketplace.
Yeah.
And people buy emotionally, and they're emotionally attached to the things that are painful, which is the problem. And so they're looking to soothe the pain. And so they have to talk to the solution and the problem, or they'll go nowhere.
Yeah. So, how can understanding and embracing one's best self contribute to entrepreneurial success? Can you
Mm.
provide practical tips for our listeners on how to embark on this journey of self discovery and improvement?
Sure. So one of the assessments that I love to offer my clients, especially if they really don't know what's special about them. They can sit there and go, well, I'm good at this and I'm good at that. I'm like, no. What makes you think uniquely compared to everybody else? And if they don't know how to answer that, one of the assessments is now owned by Gallup. It was discovered by Don Clifton, called the Clifton Strength Finders. It's a strength finder assessment. And what it does is it maps out the brain and how the brain works and it responds to stimuli when you're at your best.
Mm,
It's not here's what you need to fix assessment. No. In fact, mindset's so important when people step in to take this assessment. I'm like, think about a day when everything went so well, you contemplated buying a lottery ticket. This is your lucky day. Every decision you made is going right. Put yourself in that day and take this assessment. It's a very short assessment, but what it does is it allows you to see how you think, which means how you take in information, what motivates you, how you give information. And we're all unique. They have not replicated any one brain they've ever assessed, including twins and quadruplets. We all think differently. And that's the beauty of understanding your strengths, is understand the value your strengths are offering, your creativity to your clients, and the way you process. And we talk about diversity at the table. And while we want the table to be representative of our market that we're selling to, what we really want is diversity of thought and valuing the differences, because that's where innovation plays the loudest, is when I can get someone who thinks completely opposite me, which means they're probably the first person who ticks me off. If I can stop thinking about the tick off point and step back and say, what's the value they're trying to bring to the table? Because nobody gets up to suck in the morning, ever.
This is true.
You know, everybody's getting up to make today better than yesterday. So we're all trying to bring value to the table. We just do it very differently. We don't do it intentionally to make everybody else mad. Nobody goes, I cannot wait to make everybody mad today. It's going to be epic. No. So how do we sit there and step back and go, okay, what is it they're trying to bring? Sometimes we have to ask them, okay, what is your point? What are you trying to bring that I'm not getting? I see it differently than you. And when you learn how to value that, that's where innovation blows you out of your thinking box, and people can create better and faster together. And so when you know what you offer and the way you think and see the world, you're able to better stand in your confidence and know who you are and know who you're not, and let go.
It's true.
Because if you just try and be like everybody else, you're going to be really good at being average.
Yeah,
And no entrepreneur makes money being average.
it's true.
So let's get to know your strengths. And when people want to know their strengths, I offer, anybody can buy the assessment, but I'll offer a package where I include a debrief where I can interpret the results, because they want to know what to do with them.
Yeah,
We've all taken assessments and go, sweet, a piece of paper. I have no idea what this means.
this
And I
is
go,
true.
well, I'll help you. I'll help you learn what that means. And so that's my gift. I know that I can help people connect the dots with the data and into taking data and put into action. It's just one of the things I know I do really well. So I'm happy to offer it to anybody who ever wants to take the assessment and get debriefed, because it's really valuable as an entrepreneur to know what you're really good at.
Awesome. We'll put all the links to everything when we post the episode. So for those currently facing challenging performance reviews or feedback, what steps can they take to turn these experiences into opportunities for growth and development?
So let's say somebody's waiting and waiting and waiting. Finally, the annual performance review is finally happening. And they're like, sweet, I'm going to get credit for all the things I've done. And they have this lovely form, and it says on a scale of 1 to 5, rate yourself, and then we're going to rate you. And what they have a bad habit of doing is going in and feeling as if they're the person sitting there and just on the intake side of the equation. And I always say, no, you're going in to have a conversation, and you're going to want to know what you do really well and where you're going to grow next. Do not look at the gaps between your ratings and their ratings as a bad thing. Look at the gaps as an interpretation opportunity. What you think is successful obviously may or may not match what they think is successful. So you can ask, if it's on a scale of 1 to 5, you gave yourself a 5 and they gave you a 4, your question would be, what's the one thing I need to do to make that 4 or 5 for you? Go learn. Don't take it. Don't get defensive. Go in. And if they haven't told you what you're doing right, you get permission to ask, hey, what's one thing I do really well on that in my job? What's one thing I do really well in that in my job? What's one thing? Because if you're still there, you're still worth investing in. So make this conversation an investment conversation. Gather what you're doing right and ask them, where would you like to see me grow next? What's the one thing first thing, most important thing, however you want to ask it, that you want to see me grow next? And what does that look like to you? How will you recognize it when I do it?
Yeah. We've delved deeply into research on personal and professional development. What are some key resources or tools you suggest for entrepreneurs looking to enhance their self-awareness and communication skills?
Well, I love assessments. It's was part of my graduate studies because I think people like to know how they compare to others in the world. And there's two or three of my favorites that I recommend to clients. The strength assessment is one where they understand how they think. If they're leading teams, Leadership Circle 360. And the reason I like that assessment is it doesn't offer results based on opinion. It's not qualitative, it's quantitative. It measures how often people see that behavior in you. And it's not a judgment of whether it's good or bad. It's like, well, I see 1 to 5. How often do I see them do that? And it's a 3. And you may go, I do that all the time. And I go, well, they're not experiencing the behavior. So if it's in your head, it's not coming out of your body. And we walk our values. So it's one way for a leader to get a really clear picture of what behaviors are coming out into their workplace and what behaviors are not. And that's easy to tweak.
Yeah.
And they are looking for other tools. There's a lot of brilliant tools in the market, especially we've all bought our body's weight times 10 in books, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
But getting really good at communicating what success looks like to them, to the people they work with, the people they want as their clients, and the people they hire is one of the very first fundamental behaviors of a great leader. Be really clear at what it takes to be successful working with you and ask them what success looks like to them.
Yeah.
And keep that conversation open, and they'll learn a lot, and they'll be able to step into any action that's required to meet the client need, to meet the investor need, or even to learn the needs of their employees.
So before we wrap up, do you have anything that you want to leave our audience with?
I do. One, you've heard me, preach about asking questions and gaining positive information. But one of the things I want every entrepreneur and leader and employee to kind of adopt and like do an invisible tattoo is whenever you say yes to something, be cognizant of what you're saying no to. And whenever you say no to something, be cognizant of what you're automatically saying yes to. And be really brave and bold in defining those for yourself and what you want your dream life to look like. Do not become a martyr to your work. Do not become a slave to a sports schedule that doesn't fit. Be really bold here and understand your yes and no's.
Love it. Well, Carol, thank you so much for joining me today. This was so fun. I really enjoyed our conversation. Um, for our audience who wants to reach out to you, find you, can you give us all of your handles?
Sure. I love connecting on LinkedIn because it's just a place I like to play. And my first name ends with an E, and my last name looks like pizza. So Carol Stizza is out there. And I also have a website. It's relevant-insight.com. I'm on Amazon. I wrote a book on the Ask framework. There's a new chapter I contributed to cracking the rich code. I think I'm in volume 13. There's just been a lot of places to play, but my website, LinkedIn, and if they want more on LinkedIn, I'm happy to give them my email and my how to text me, etc. And I'm on Instagram with Relevant Insight Coaching as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Carol. I appreciate your time today.
Well, I am honored to spend time with you, and I love all listeners who find any of this useful. I hope it really helps somebody gain one nugget today that helps.
I want to thank Carol for joining me today. I hope today's discussion left you feeling empowered to own your value, communicate it confidently, and take control of your success. Whether it's in your business, your career, or your personal journey, remember, success isn't just about having the right tools, it's about knowing how to use them and believing in your unique worth. And that's a wrap. To our listeners, thank you for joining me on this journey of learning, growth, and inspiration. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform and connect with our community on social media. I'd love to hear your feedback, so leave a review and let me know what topics you'd want to explore in future episodes. Remember, the future belongs to those who embrace challenges, adapt with tenacity, and keep pushing forward. Keep growing, keep pivoting, and most importantly, stay tenacious in your pursuits. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to bringing you more insightful conversations in our upcoming episodes. This is Sonia signing off, but as always, keep chasing your dreams with tenacity.